The right to free speech is a fundamental principle, but we cannot tolerate deceitful individuals. We draw the line when hypocrites take center stage, yet we also recognize the need for a society where ideas can be shared without fear of punishment. However, this means that even those with wicked intentions may have a platform to speak from. In our society, we often forget the power of words and their influence on impressionable minds. Should there be consequences for harmful speech, it is up to us to decide who should face punishment. But instead of empathizing with others, we tend to judge and entertain ourselves at the expense of others. I remember a preacher once telling me that Christians don't carry stones in their pockets, but sinners do. Sadly, many of those sinners hold positions of power, he chuckled. This begs the question, why does society applaud our successes but become merciless when we make mistakes? Is it just human nature to tear down those who falter? None of us are perfect, we all make mistakes, and sometimes acting irrationally can lead us down a dark path. But it is important that we accept responsibility for our actions and strive towards self-improvement, even when society may try to demonize us for our flaws. After all, change is a continual process. Let me tell you a story. In a place driven by blood and entertainment, but controlled by political oversight, the air was filled with the scent of urgency. The men of power gathered in a small hidden room. They were merely known as the politicians, discussing new strategies and how to exploit new opportunities. As you can see, this was the season of change, the dreaded election time. Every time, each man feared losing their district. Each one controlled a providence, politician of the South, politician of the North, politician of the East, and politician of the West. Two of the men's seats had come open, East and West, and in order to maintain control, they must rule as a unit. The men had finally devised a solution, so they sent for the judge to have a meeting. When the judge arrived, they were eager to present their ideas. The politician of the East seemed to be leading the order. He approached the judge and merely stated, "Oh, great judge, you've been doing a great job so far. But unfortunately, people feel that you are weak. Crime continues to overtake this city, and the people are craving a new taste for justice. The other day, you allowed a man who stole a loaf of bread the chance to work off his crime to the merchant he stole from," said the politician of the East. "Yes," said the judge, "the man stole the bread in order to feed his family. No matter what, it was wrong, but yet he was able to work for the merchant, who eventually gave the man a job. The man did serve 2 months in jail." "Yes, yes," said the politician of the West, "I understand your need to provide mercy onto the sickness of sinners, but we must make an example no matter what the situation. No one should get away with being unpunished for their sins. We have to bring down the crime rate. We have to create a system that moves through the city with an unshakable conviction to rid the world of sinners." The politician of the East jumped up. "Yes, that's what we want. We must be able to rid the world and punish all sinners. We think it's in your best interest, Judge." The politician of the East stated, "Even though our seats are at the hands of the people, we still have the power to replace you. I would really hate to put a new judge in power. But if you provide us what we need, Judge, we will make sure nobody can take your seat. Your voice will be the embodiment of justice, and your rule will set the standard for all to follow. We look forward to seeing you soon, Judge." The judge sat in silence as the men exited the room, his mind racing with thoughts and schemes. Suddenly, his assistant burst into the room, flustered and breathless. "I heard everything, Judge," she panted. "Politicians are so fickle and desperate for power. You should know by now that in this game, you must only align yourself with the elite and those in positions of influence. Politicians are like mistresses to be used and manipulated for their temporary favors. shower them with false intentions, and ensnare them with leashes of obligation, but never trust them completely. Their loyalty shifts with the winds, and they will spread their legs for anyone promising to take them to the promised land. The judge's eyes opened wide with a cunning determination as he nodded, knowing he had to play this game wisely to stay on top. The judge's face contorts with a sinister smile as he whispers, "Don't worry, our campaign will not only sway the hearts of evil men, but punish them with their own darkest secrets." His eyes gleam with a vindictive fire as he declares, "And for those who have lost something precious, our campaign will reunite them with what they have been longing for." He spits out the words with venom, his voice dripping with malice. Their insatiable thirst for blood has corrupted even their ability to feel empathy, leaving their souls barren and incapable of forgiveness. The irony is not lost on him as he adds with a cold laugh, "It's almost comical how the righteous have become the very thing they claim to despise." Then the judge said, "The real tragedy is the sacrifice that must be made to uplift their desires. The ungodly men have appointed me to become their hand of God, but their intention is to make me a political sensation and later sacrifice me for political gain. Fortunately for me, I have navigated through these treacherous roads before and know my way back to the source." Days passed and tensions grew as the judge called for a meeting with the politicians. Their expensive robes swished around the table as they impatiently waited, their eyes gleaming with greed and ambition. The politician of the East could no longer contain his impatience, yelling out, "Enough, Judge! We've given you ample time. How will we eradicate the criminal activity of these sinners?" The judge's arrival was met with hushed whispers and anxious glances. He placed a large gold box in the center of the table, a smirk playing on his lips. "Gentlemen, this box holds the solution to all our problems. It symbolizes our campaign's vision and heralds the end of sin." Eager curiosity filled the room as one politician after another demanded to know what was inside the box. The judge replied, "The question is not what it is, but what it can do. This weapon will not only punish sinners, but also expose them without fail." With a grand gesture, he lifted the lid of the box, revealing a sleek knife with a handle encrusted in diamonds, a gleaming silver blade resembling moonlight, and a golden tip adorned with powerful words. The judge lifted the knife high into the air and declared, "Our campaign shall be named Stab a Sinner in the Throat." A frenzy of excitement erupted among the politicians, their roars and applause echoing off the walls. The politician of the East exclaimed, "This will go down in history. We'll build an arena where we can publicly persecute these sinners on a grand scale." As they embraced each other in celebration, the politicians declared the judge as their savior and proclaimed him as the face of truth. Little did they know, this knife would become an instrument of destruction and chaos, unleashing a reign of terror upon both sinners and innocents alike. After a year had passed, the two corrupt politicians of the West and East were back in power, their greed and thirst for control unquenched. They had built an arena for their own entertainment, where they could watch the people suffer while they feasted on lavish food. The judge emerged from the shadows, a sinister figure in his black robe, his eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. "You came for justice," he bellowed to the crowd, who eagerly awaited their first victim. "Let me introduce our first sinner, a woman caught in an affair with a married man." The crowd roared with delight as the woman was dragged onto the stage. The judge's voice cut through the cheers. "Do you deny these charges?" The woman pleaded for mercy, But the crowd chanted, "Stab the sinner! Stab the sinner!" The judge raised his hand to silence them. "Yes, we all want to see sinners punished, but first let us hear why she committed this sin." Trembling, the woman revealed her desperate situation, a widow struggling to provide for her children until she was offered financial support by a powerful man. The judge asked for the man's name, and without hesitation, the woman pointed to the politician of the West. The crowd erupted into accusations and insults. The judge quieted them and said, "Sadly, she must pay for her crimes." Before she could react, he plunged a knife into her throat. The crowd's excitement turned to whispers as they watched her lifeless body being carried off stage. But there was no time to dwell on this chilling act as the judge announced their next victim, the politician of the West. As he was dragged onto stage, he begged for his life, claiming that the woman he had just seen killed was someone he cared for deeply. He revealed his unhappy marriage and his desire for children, but his wife's refusal to fulfill his needs. The crowd jeered and booed him. The judge raised his hand again and declared, "Well, you've heard the people." And with one swift motion, he plunged the knife into the politician's throat, the crowd cheering in approval. This was a twisted display of justice, fueled by the corrupt desires of those in power. And as they carried off yet another body, the judge's ghastly words echoed in the minds of all who witnessed it. "Who shall be next to face our judgment?" The judge stepped back, his blood-stained knife glinting in the harsh light. The crowd roared eagerly, hungry for more blood and suffering. "Time for our next sinner," he announced with a twisted smile. As they dragged the politician of the West's wife to the center stage, the crowd began to whisper and yell, confused and outraged. "Why would you bring her? She was innocent." Voices rose from the masses. But the judge paid them no mind, as he calmly stated, "She did not tend to her wifely duties. That is a sin." The woman trembled in fear, and tears streamed down her face. "Before you are sentenced, tell me why you have sinned," the judge demanded. With a defiant look in her eye, the woman yelled out at the politicians facing her, "My husband was a good man, but your corrupt lifestyles influenced him. I spent my life building his political career, sacrificing everything for him. And the reason we never had children is because he could never spare a moment for them or for me. He wanted power above all else, and you were his role models." She pointed accusingly at the politician of the East. "I loved my husband, but I lived a lie trying to maintain his status." Before she could continue, the judge ruthlessly plunged his knife into her throat, silencing her forever. The crowd fell into stunned silence at the brutality of it all. Fixing his cold gaze on them, the judge declared, "You wanted justice, and I am giving it to you. Our next sinner is none other than the politician of the East himself." The angry mob swelled, their voices rising to a deafening pitch as they cried out for justice. "Seize him! Seize the sinner!" The politician of the East fought against the soldier's strong grip, but was mercilessly dragged to the center of the stage where a horde of furious faces awaited him. The crowd's chant grew louder and more vicious. "Stab the sinner in the throat! Stab the sinner in the throat!" Their fervent eyes bore into him with venomous hatred. Gasping for air, the politician of the East demanded to know his crimes, but the judge's reply was cold and calculating. "What kind of seeds have you sowed in the minds of those you serve? You used your power to deceive and manipulate, tearing people apart from the truth, and you reveled in it, spreading your poison like propaganda." And then, with a sinister smile, the judge leaned in close and whispered into his ear, "To purge the world of sinners, one must first create a world without mercy. With a sudden thrust, the judge plunged the knife into his throat as the crowd erupted in frenzied cheers. "Stab the sinner in the throat! Stab the sinner in the throat!" The politician's eyes widened in shock and pain as he realized too late that he had become a victim of his own cruel agenda. His screams were drowned out by the cacophony of voices celebrating his demise. What is your perspective?